This episode of The Clear Out was recorded on the 25th of July 2023 at home in Wicklow. And it's a bit of a wrap-up episode of the week that's been. And I spend the first half of the episode maybe talking about some movies I've seen recently. Almost none of which are new movies. A couple of old ones, a couple of recent-ish ones, and I just sort of do little mini reviews of those. I talk about a couple of weddings that have taken place in the last few days of people close to me, to us here at #blessed, and I have some mental health stuff to talk about. So that's in the latter part of the episode. I talk a bit about what we take in and what we see in the world, what we perceive and what we miss because we're focused on other things. So fundamentally, I'm talking about picking up what what life is putting down for us. Sometimes we miss that stuff when it could be very beneficial to us if we actually were aware or responsive or tuned into, oh yeah, that response is actually going to lead me to a good place if I'm alert to it. Yeah, that's it. That's what's coming up. I have a few words about the Ashes, the cricket, for the sports fans. But other than that, it's business as usual. So come with me. And you'll be in a world of pure imagination. No, you won't be in a world of pure imagination. You'll be in a world of coping, resilience, positive psychology, and questions asked but not always answered. Okay, I will see you around the corner. Cheers.
Ooh, not gonna change my mind, leaving the dream behind, keep my mojo.
Hi. My name is Dara Clear and you're listening to The Clear Out. You're very welcome. How are you? How's the last week or so been? Do you like that one? Do you like the or so? For the past month or so. For a few days or so. Is that an Irishism or does that exist elsewhere? Anyway, how have you been over the last while? Or so, thereabouts. This is going to be a that kind of an episode. So if you're in the mood for a you've come to the right place. That's what I'm chopping up in this delicate Essen. Did you ever think of it that way? Delicate Essen. Essen is German for eat, isn't it? Delicate Essen. Eating delicate things? Delicacies? I have no idea what the etymology of that word is. But in any case, what I'm serving up at this particular delicate Essen is yeah, a bit of that. That's going to be one of those episodes. So I hope you can stay loose and just hang and see where we end up. Yes. What do you call a questionable ass? An if-but. What do you call a bee that comes after April? A maybe. So when we talk about if-buts and maybes, we're talking about a questionable derriere or a questioning caboose. That's an if-but. And then we're talking about maybes, not June bees or July bees. Okay, that's what's going on. That's the vibe. That's what you've just gone, click, play. I'm going to listen to this bozo for an hour or so. We'll wait and see. We'll wait and see what plays out. Where to begin? That's the question. Where to begin in the weekly digest? It's not always a weekly digest, but in this weekly perambulation through the world of mental health, resilience, positive psychology, coping, politics, philosophy, psychology, movies, life, parenting, masculinity, cats, chickens, swimming, Tai Chi, perhaps, Qigong, karate, karate. All of these things may or may not come up, but they're all ever present somewhere in and around #blessed, which is the location where the Clear Out is recorded once a week and has been for the last 2 years. So I can tell you I was just in the water not very long ago at all. I had one of those days. So where does your mind go? Where does it travel to? What memory board or memory wall do you gaze upon when I say that I had one of those days? Do you go instinctively to the negative place? Because that would be correct. I had one of those days where I just could not bring the day to heal. I couldn't wrangle the day into a corral of my liking. I just couldn't get on top of whatever this day was. And yeah, it was a struggle. And I thought I would have been recording this earlier today. As it happens, I'm recording it at night. The day just got away from me, and I think ultimately I was having a moment's reflection on it. I think ultimately I did follow my own advice, even though I was frustrated and I couldn't quite find my mojo. I thought I was going to have a highly productive day, and it turned out not to be that at all. And in fact, I put myself to sleep twice. Now, I wasn't listening to this podcast. That's not how I put myself to sleep. I'm using that particular phrasing, like I was putting a baby down. I put her to bed. I put myself to sleep. Not I fell asleep unintentionally. I intentionally lay down and set my alarm and slept twice today, which didn't feel marvelous, but it felt needed, and I just sort of gave into it. I was sitting at this microphone twice or three times already earlier today, and had to leave because I just couldn't summon what I needed to do the work I wanted to do. Ultimately, late in the day, I did manage to record, for the first time in a long time, I managed to record a little something for Aura, the wellness app, the wellness and sleep app. Aura, can you feel my aura? And I recorded a meditation there, which I called, what did I call it? I wanted to call it making room for the unloved parts of ourselves. And there's a letter limit. So I couldn't use that. So in the end I wrote it as accepting the unloved parts of ourselves. It's not quite as evocative. Making room has a different vibe. But the impulse to do that little meditation for the app came from one of my Tai Chi classes a couple of weeks ago, where one of the participants was just having a tough week and struggling with some emotional stuff and some big events in their life. And we spoke about the need to integrate all parts of ourselves and not try to reject the parts of ourselves that make us uncomfortable or challenge us, or the parts of ourselves that we just can't handle sometimes. And I spoke about the idea of, flow, because of course in a Tai Chi class or Qi Gong class, the objective is flow, to use breathing and the techniques to facilitate energy flow of the life force, the chi or the ki as it's known in Japanese culture. And if we're blocking ourselves and we're arriving at red lights at parts of ourselves that we just can't handle, that just freak us out or make us want to scream, that's not flow. That's like I said, that's a red light, that's an arrest, that's a full stop. And it's very hard. I've spoken about it. I refer to this often here on the podcast. It's easy to talk about mindfulness. It's easy to talk about self-care, self-compassion. It's easy to talk about acceptance, or even radical acceptance. And sometimes there's a lot of talk, and there's a lot of sound bites, and there's a lot of pithy platitudes, and there's a lot of performative wellness that's put about the place, and I get very cynical about all of that. I smell a rat, a very well-groomed, pretty rat, saying lots of nice things and using lots of nice language. I mean, this came up a couple. Was this last week's episode? I was talking about this, the Jonah Hill controversy and therapy talk. But anyway, you know what I'm talking about. There's a lot of is it inauthentic or unauthentic? Inauthentic, I think. Inauthentic wellness stuff out there. And here at the Clear Out, we try to remedy that inauthenticity by leaning into authenticity. And sometimes that can be a bit messy and a bit sloppy and not altogether cogent and not a nice handy sound bite. But it is what I do here. Yes, so you will hear me sometimes refer to things like radical acceptance, and you can hear those inverted commas around those two words, just like holding the space. Now, did I hold the space for myself today? I don't know if I did. I was feeling pretty narky with myself. I had another great textbook parenting fail where I was shouting at my daughter, which I did not feel very good about. So that wasn't good. Thankfully, I did see her at the end of today. She went off with a friend today and went for a sleepover. And I had to drop off some stuff for her, a little night package, pyjamas and cuddlies and a toothbrush and the like. And she was very excited to see me and gave me a big hug, which I really, really appreciated. And I apologised to her for how I'd spoken to her earlier today. And it was a nice little moment, and I was very grateful to have had it. But yeah, for whatever reason, I'm a bit bent out of shape. I seem to be a bit bent out of shape currently in my life. Something has been lingering and not quite leaving the building. And the building I refer to is the edifice that is moi, this entity, me. So yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't quite put my finger on where this vulnerability and volatility is truly located. but I have been a bit all over the place, and a bit mood swingy from day to day. So that hasn't been a lot of fun. I haven't really been enjoying that. And look, it's grand. I'm not excuse me, sorry, I'm not here to play the tiniest violin in the world. Do you know what I'm here to do? I'm here to drink this. That is, okay, licorice and cinnamon tea with a bit of honey in it. I added some honey. Now, am I the only idiot in the world who says licorice and not licorice? So is licorice a terrible mispronunciation? I don't know. Okay, licorice and cinnamon tea. See, that jars with me. Anyway, it's very nice. It's very soothing. So I was trying to tell you that I was in the water about 2 hours ago, I guess. Maybe a bit less than that, about an hour and a half ago. Dusk. So after had the sun gone down? I don't know. Look, it was late evening. It was after dinner, and I just had to get that circuit breaker. So I went for a swim in the river nearby, and I really just wanted to hit the river, not see another human being, get in, swim, and reset my brain. But unfortunately, a very chatty older couple wanted to talk to me about being back in Ireland and the problem with tenants and renters, and how disappointed they were with the state of their house that they'd come back to after it being rented out for several years and it hadn't been taken care of. And I mean, that's legitimate. That is legitimate. But unfortunately, there was a tone from the male member of this couple, and his tone was a little bit. It was a little bit. What word am I looking for? It was a little bit, the peasants are revolting, the things that they do, it's ridiculous. And he wanted to talk property with me, and I'm a renter myself, and he wanted to talk property, and I mentioned I'd moved back from Australia, and he wanted to talk about property in Melbourne, and now a friend of his had sold a house for millions, and I was like, this is not the energy I need right now. I just wanted to get in the water. But there's something I give off, some energy that I give off that is the opposite of stay the F away from me energy. It's don't mind me, I'm in my Speedos, please come and talk to me now energy. Now that I'm half naked, I'd love to talk to you about life. I'd love to talk to you about what's on your plate. That's the energy I seem to give off, because people approach me, unsolicited approachings, and unburden themselves. Yes, anyway, I swam, and the swim was good. And here I am back here at the microphone, and I could have put this off till tomorrow night, but I'm going to go and see Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer tomorrow night. I'm going to go with my brother, and that is a bit of a rapprochement with my brother. So we've had a bit of tension recently, and yeah, this is a thing I know we'll both enjoy, so it's important. And I want to see the movie as well. I heard Cillian Murphy being interviewed on Mark Maron's podcast last week, and yeah, he just came across really well, really well. And he was just talking about his career and how he began. Because Mark Maron, he's great at getting his guests to relax and go back and unpack the past, and yeah, it was good. And Cillian Murphy just he just came across as very normal, very unaffected, very kind of chilled, and I am looking forward to seeing him in this movie. So I'll report back next week if I think of it, and let you know my thoughts on Oppenheimer. Yes. So, speaking of movies, I watched a couple of cop movies recently. Two movies which are, in some circles, considered classics. One was William Friedkin's To Live and Die in L.A. That's from 1985, and a mere 4 years earlier, but stylistically seemed to be from eons apart, was Sidney Lumet's Prince of the City, which I referred to a couple of months ago, or last month, when it was announced that Treat Williams had died, because Treat Williams is the star and kind of driving force of Prince of the City, and it was a movie that I've read reviews about over the years and knew a little bit about the basic plot, and I was curious to see it. So yeah, I watched that the other night. And To Live and Die in LA, I remember it being advertised in movies as a kid. So I would have been 11 when that was in the cinema. And I was too young to go and see that. I didn't have a kind of a big itch to go and see it. Yeah, it's To Live and Die in LA is kind of a nasty but sort of full-blooded cop thriller actioner with a great car chase. William Friedkin trying to follow up what he did in French Connection, except this time in LA. And as the kind of the chief kind of protagonist of the movie, you have William Peterson. William Peterson, who was in Michael Mann's Manhunter, the first Hannibal Lecter movie, and yeah, an actor who I'm always a little bit mystified by. I just can't see what the allure is. I don't know. I don't know what it is about him. But nothing I've seen him in has made me change my mind that he just isn't I don't find him a very interesting actor. He's like a poor man's Michael Keaton. And he had some body movement in one scene in To Live and Die in LA, and I was going, who does that remind me of? And it was Michael Keaton. Michael Keaton has that kind of twitchy, nervous thing that he does. But Michael Keaton he's always good, really. He's always got something going on. And I can't say that for William Peterson. He's just a bit, I don't know, sullen, a bit heavy. I don't think he's wooden as such, although he was walking very much like a 1980s man. To Live and Die in LA, a little bit bow-legged, a little bit cowboy booted, tight jeans. Yeah, strange. Very good Willem Dafoe in that movie. Yeah, and fascinating supporting role by, now I won't remember the actress's name, but is it Janice? Is that her name in Frasier? Who ends up with Niles? Is it Janice? Is that her name? Is that the character's name who looks after John Mahoney, the dad? But she has this extraordinary supporting role in To Live and Die in LA, as I think she's basically like a stripper come pole dancer who is having has a sort of a lesbian affair with Willem Dafoe's girlfriend, and she's just there in several scenes, just sort of lingering lasciviously in lingerie in the background. There you go. That was a nice bit of alliteration. Lingering lasciviously in lingerie. Anyway, to live and die in LA is, yeah, it's worth checking out if you haven't seen it. And it's just got a bit of something about it. It's got a bit of energy. It's just got a bit of that Friedkin attitude that kind of pops off the screen. Quite gory in places, but also has a sort of an 80s sensibility, an 80s shorthand of masculinity that I don't think ages that well. It just lacks a bit of nuance, a bit of subtlety. It doesn't really allow the actors much room to actually go on their arc. And that allows me to segue to Prince of the City, which is more, and you'll see in reviews of the time, it's more sort of a verite documentary sort of vibe to it. Not fully, but there's a very different aesthetic and a very different look, and a very different vibe, and it's quite long. It's about 2 3/4 hours long, and fundamentally it's the story of a cop who is part of this very successful narcotics squad, who are all dirty. They're all taking money from the various busts, and they're bringing in these big collars. But Internal Affairs establishes itself and starts to investigate this particular unit, and it's a funny one because, again, in terms of the storytelling, Treat Williams suddenly presents himself. He's called in for an interview with one of the Internal Affairs guys, and then he sort of laughs it off and tells him he's got nothing to give and blah blah blah. But then he comes back and comes back to the guy's home, and then leaves angrily because he's trying to decide what he wants to do, and then eventually decides he's going to be the guy to inform on corrupt cops, but he won't rat on his partners. It's kind of really good, but kind of not good at all. And the Treat Williams' performance is all over the place and tonally very odd. And sometimes the editing is really quite strange. And Treat Williams basically looks like Colin Farrell's less good-looking older brother. He was 30 at the time I think he made it. And yeah, it's a strange central performance. And again, I guess it's a style thing. It's an acting style crossover from the 70s meeting the very early 80s, and it somehow doesn't quite come off. There's a lot of men with bad hair and not great clothes staring meaningfully into each other's eyes, and then one of them kicks off really angrily, but they're not really, I don't know, it's weird. It's a weird one. Like midway through the movie, or 2/3 of the way through the movie, one of the Internal Affairs guys is telling Treat Williams that he has to leave. He's got a promotion and he won't be working with him anymore. And Treat Williams congratulates him, like, you know, like the guy's, you know, his best buddy who's just, you know, become a father for the first time. It makes no sense in the context of the story, in the context of Treat Williams being a cop who's informing on other cops and the stress he's under. It's really bizarre. So that was disappointing. That was disappointing, and yet, you know, it has sort of stayed with me, even as an artifact from from 1981, and just looking at the clothes and looking at the body language and the posture of the actors. You know, some extraordinary hair. Yeah, but there's nothing cool or sexy about it. It's kind of fascinating, but I don't know if I'd bring myself to watch it again. So there you go. Two more actually. One more bad one. Venom, from a few years ago, starring Tom Hardy and is it Riz Ahmed and Michelle Williams. This was a Marvel superhero movie about the character Venom, I mean, the simplest way to describe Venom is he's like an evil Spider-Man, and I know hardcore comic nerds will be rolling over in their graves or in their superhero covered beds, because Venom is actually like an alien parasite who takes over host bodies, but when he emerges in his true form, he's a black suited, sharp fanged Spider-Man. So I still feel my description is accurate enough. Anyway, just a bizarrely not very interesting, quite inept movie. Again, bizarre editing choices. Tom Hardy, fine, but not really that interesting or that charming. And Tom Hardy in love with and being loved by Michelle Williams with zero chemistry between them. A bizarre choice for Michelle Williams, I feel, who can be such a classy actress. Riz Ahmed, always quite good. But just a very poorly made movie. And one thing I've noticed, I may have mentioned it before on the podcast, you can usually tell, you can usually tell if a movie's good or not. You can often tell just by the opening scene. But usually by 20 minutes in to any movie, you have all the information you need. You have a sense of the stakes. You have a sense of the key characters. You have a sense of where things might be going. You certainly have a very strong sense of the point of departure, and you have a sense of caring about the protagonists. In Venom, it was almost 40 minutes before anything truly significant happened to our protagonist, Tom Hardy. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is ridiculously late to finally be, getting our teeth into one of the main drivers of the story. So, I kind of lazily and pathetically kind of watched that the other night, and I wasn't happy at the end of it. But one thing I did watch that I enjoyed very much was the Jennifer Lopez documentary, Halftime. So I watched that in the last week and a half or so as well. And Halftime was out, I guess, a year ago, maybe a bit less, and was received very well. It is authorised. It is therefore curated and spun and controlled. And yet, Jennifer Lopez, I think, comes across really well in it. And There's something about her, just about her sincerity and her artistic ability, and her desire to represent, her desire to be taken seriously and acknowledged, and it's it's pretty fascinating, and she just seems again like an authorized documentary, but she does come across well, and she comes across as pretty real for large parts of it. And probably the two main sort of plot drivers of the documentary are the fact that she's going to be appearing at the halftime show at the Super Bowl, which I guess was last year or 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, which she did with Shakira, and it was a great, she saw it as a great opportunity to represent, Latinx culture in the US. But she did make a comment about how sort of insulting it was that they programmed or got two huge Latina stars to share the halftime spot, where it's usually one act that gets that gig. But yeah, no, it was very good. I actually found it quite moving. So that was one of the main kind of plot points of the documentary, and the other one was that she was on the campaign trail, the awards campaign trail, the promotional campaign trail for the movie Hustlers, which is directed by Lorene Scafaria, and that's an excellent movie from a couple of years ago, based on a true story about these pole dancers who started to rip off their well-to-do clientele who weren't treating them particularly well, and would come in and just throw money around, and the women involved started to basically get hold of their kind of bank details or cards or whatever, and defraud them of large sums of money. And in the movie, J-Lo is the ringleader, and she's really, really good and very, very kind of charismatic and cool, and just kind of a badass. And she hasn't had enough of those roles in her career. Like, brilliant in Steven Soderbergh's Out of Sight with George Clooney. That's, if I could only have one Jennifer Lopez performance, that would be it. She's, really, brilliant, tough, sexy in that movie. Very, very good. Great chemistry with George Clooney. See, this is the thing. You can't fake chemistry. You can't fake chemistry. It's either there or it's not. And it very much wasn't with Tom Hardy and Michelle Williams in Venom. But, so Halftime. If you haven't seen that one, and I mean, again, I suppose if you like J-Lo, you've already seen it many times, perhaps. But that was, that's one that's worth checking out. Anyway, look, there you go. I didn't realise I was going to do a quick movie wrap-up, but some quite different films there. What else has been going on? A couple of weddings. My sister-in-law got married at the weekend in Australia on Friday. So congratulations to Sarah and Rudy. They had a lovely event that we were obviously unable to attend, but it went down very well. I sent them a poem. They're like, thanks a lot. I was trying to get that poem written in time to bump it out to some people I knew who'd be at the wedding, so they could. One of them was my other sister-in-law, my wife's older sister, and one was a friend of the family's, to see if he would read it out. Apparently he did in the end, and I'm told it went down quite well. But I was sitting up late last Thursday night, exhausted, falling asleep at the computer. I had an idea for a poem that I quite liked, so I wrote a version of the poem falling asleep for 5 minutes, waking myself up, continuing, falling asleep for another 5 minutes, waking up, continuing. And then when I finished that poem, I just didn't like it at all. And I scrapped it. I just thought it was too sappy and sentimental. So I began again. And I wrote something quite different. So I might share that one with you at some point. Not today, I don't think, but I'll share it with you in due course. So that was their wedding. And then we were at another wedding. Sorry, we weren't at that one, but there was another wedding the following day here in Ireland. We were at a friend's wedding down in Wexford. Actually, the daughter of friends of ours was getting married. So that was a bit weird to think, oh, are we that age that the daughter of friends, a child of friends, could be getting married? Now, she's getting married youngish, mid-20s, not crazy young though. But it was a lovely wedding. It really was. It was really charming and fun. It wasn't a huge crowd, but a really nice group of people there. Some lovely individual moments, some nice speeches. I like the fact that the bride and her father entered the ceremony room to the music of How to Train Your Dragon. And so again, that gives you an idea of the age profile. So that was nice. And there was a young man in attendance, a friend of the bride. And he was a very distinctive looking guy who carried himself a very particular way, held himself a very particular way. And I was reminded of the Sesame Street song, like, one of these kids is not like the others. And that was this guy. And later in the night, he took to the dance floor by himself in his very nice suit. And he just launched himself into this dance, which was kind of amazing. Now, I'd never seen this guy before, so I think there are others who know him who maybe didn't bat an eyelid. But I was like, this is really cool. And I was really just going, this is excellent. It was just pure, unadulterated, personal expression. And he had some moves. So there was something very held at the center of his movement, even though he was throwing himself about the place and doing some quite elaborate jumping, spinning, whirling moves. And there was a part of me that was going, has this guy had some training? And then there was a part of me that was going, there's no way this guy has had any training. But it was bloody brilliant. And it was just him on his own, in an extraordinary performance that I think, I'm not even sure if it was for him or if it was for the bride and groom. It was probably for him. But he owned that dance floor and no one dared set foot on it while he was doing his thing. And when he finished, the room erupted into applause, and he just kind of smartened himself up and straightened his jacket and walked off the floor without acknowledging anyone at all. So that was a highlight for me. I was just grinning for the entire duration of what had taken place, and it was really excellent. So well done that man. Most impressive and inspiring as well in its own way. Just walking his own path. Do you know what I mean? If that doesn't inspire you, I mean, I pity you. If that doesn't touch you or reach you or make you go, maybe I could throw off a shackle or two. Anyway, what else? Do you know what else? I've become a father again. That's right. I've become a father to 14 little chickens. The girls at #blessed That would be Charlotte and Bobo, the two hens. They emerged last week with baby chicks. Charlotte had been sitting on 14 eggs and hatched 13 of them. And Bobo had been sitting on one, a solitary egg. And she didn't emerge at the same time as her sister. She stayed hidden. And I just assumed, geez, no chicken baby for Bobo. But lo and behold, a day or two later, there she was with a single chick who I say my daughter has dubbed Uno. So there are 14 new members to the #blessed family. And we're looking at a little fostering program with our friend up the road, Mr. Will. So we'll see what happens there, but they'll be going to a safe place, and then some of them, not all of them, will return to us after the summer season, I think is the plan. So yeah, that's been the excitement. That has been the excitement around here. One other thing I was thinking about. One other thing, or maybe two other things I was thinking about. What was it? Oh, they're connected. They're connected. Fundamentally, it's this idea of what we take in. Yeah? The idea of what we choose to see and what we choose to hear. Because that's very, very slippery, subjective territory. And I think I spoke earlier about not being in terrific form lately and trying to sort of negotiate that with myself and trying to locate where that's coming from. And I don't mind that. I mean, there's a part of me, not in a masochistic way, but there's a part of me that likes the challenge of that. There's a part of me that wants to get to the bottom of whatever the hell it is that's has me sort of turned inside out. And that's grand. But within the kind of the context of that sort of probing or trying to understand better, I've been thinking about, well, what am I actually taking in? Like, what am I hearing? What am I seeing? And then what am I missing? And it is, I think you might surprise yourself by how active you are in your selection process in terms of what you observe, perceive, identify, home in on. I think you'd surprise yourself by how selective that process is. You might think of yourself as being a bit more removed or a bit more passive / receptive, whereby you might take in more. You might be more sensitive to a broader range of things. But I feel like I've caught myself recently going, I've really let myself focus on a particular thing at the expense of another thing. And then that made me think, okay, so what's that about? What am I allowing myself to be drawn to? What am I allowing myself be magnetized by? And what, as a result of that, do I let slip through the net? Or what do I overlook? And I think that idea of seeing what we want to see, hearing what we want to hear, I mean, I think that can be applied to our lives at large. That sort of self-selecting thing that we do, which my instinct feels like it's quite subconscious. That we're not consciously going, I choose to overlook that, I choose to ignore that, I choose to see this thing. I think that's a worthwhile experiment to really see if you can catch yourself and go, why do I get drawn to this again and again and again? Why am I focusing on this part of the interpersonal clash that I'm having at the moment? Why did I not see that thing? And that's, that's very outward focused, from the subjective point of view. Put yourself at the center of that and go, what am I seeing? What am I doing? You as the agent, you as the actor. And that's interesting, I think, just to see what you might learn from that. And what's also interesting is the idea of, you've heard me speak at different times, if you're a regular listener, you've heard me speak at different times about the idea of response versus reaction, as a sort of a staple of self-care and wellness and having a bit more control in your wellness regime or in your mental health sort of structure, to try and be responsive rather than reactive, where you take a breath, where you create that space to go, hold on, what is this here? What am I actually dealing with? How do I really feel about this? What response is going to serve me best in this moment? I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think that's a bad thing to do that. But it does require a bit of practice. It does require presence of mind. It does require the cultivation of a certain calmness and cool thinking. But in that area of responses, do you ever stop and ask yourself, how am I being responded to? How is the world responding to me? What are the responses I'm getting? And that can be a range of things, because sometimes the response can be nothing, silence, silence, and sometimes the response can be anger, sometimes the response can be laughter, dismissal, sometimes the response can be approval, love. And I find myself asking, am I paying attention to the responses? So there's one side of me going, am I paying attention to what I'm doing, what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing, what I'm taking in? And then I'm thinking about, well, what's beyond me? And what are the responses around me? Am I overlooking those responses? Am I overlooking, and this is probably really the area I'm trying to drive into here, is, am I overlooking positive responses? Am I failing to acknowledge and affirm positive responses in my life, because I'm so focused on other things, or I'm, I suppose it's a little bit the cliche of you can't see the wood for the trees. But again, I think that is an area that is worth investigating, because I think sometimes we can find ourselves feeling, and again, I'm not casting myself into this role specifically at the moment, but sometimes we can find ourselves feeling alienated, or last week I spoke about this idea of loss of bearings, and this idea of maybe feeling dislocated, ungrounded, unmoored. And I think it's possible for us to get so caught up in our own stuff and so caught up in our inner turmoil or our personal sense of upset or whatever it might be, anger, disenchantment, whatever, that we stop paying attention to indicators or signs outside us. I think of David O. Russell's Silver Linings Playbook, and there's a key scene in that where Jennifer Lawrence's character confronts this whole group of people, the kind of family and friends of Bradley Cooper's character, with whom she's falling in love, and primarily his father, played by Robert De Niro, who's a sports nut and highly superstitious. And he makes some comment about how since she came on the scene, the juju, the mojo for their team has been all wrong. And then she goes into this sort of, it's a real kind of showpiece sequence where she very quickly rabbits off all the dates and facts and coincidences and times of being with Bradley Cooper, and how that's impacted very positively the results and upward trend of the team they all love. And she continually uses the phrase, if it were me reading the signs, that's what I'd say. And so it's a good example of what I'm talking about, where De Niro is focused on his own kind of angst and his own sense of upset that his son, recently discharged from a mental institution, isn't spending more time with him. And that's really what's driving his sense of anxiety and his sense of upset and personal rejection, and his consternation that he can't kind of find that bridge back to his son, the relationship that he really wants. And he's decided that it's this girl's fault and his football team's doing crap as well. But of course it's all masking what he's really concerned about. And then she flips it. And it's quite a comic scene. She flips it, and he's like, "Oh, well, yeah, maybe she's a good thing." And he's just there going, that makes sense. And kind of exposes the sort of the fickle nature of his emotional campaign. But yeah, it's like that idea then of, are you reading the signs? Are you listening? Are you paying attention? Are you seeing? Are you picking up? This is what I wanted to say. Are you picking up what life is putting down for you? And this is Hansel and Gretel in the woods. This is hopefully not the breadcrumbs, but hopefully the pebbles, so they can find their way back to their father. And sometimes life is putting down pebbles and we don't see them because we're allowing ourselves to be misdirected, and maybe we're misdirecting ourselves based on false beliefs, based on our own agendas and our own campaigns for this, that or the other. And we're missing what life is putting down for us. Life is putting down stuff, going, pick it up, it's going to lead you somewhere. Pick it up, it's going to lead you somewhere. Can't you see? We're doing what we can. I've just made life we. But You know what I mean, don't you? Do you? Does that resonate? Does that make any sense to you? Am I just one man drinking his licorice tea? Licorice? I'm going to have some more. It's not as hot as it was when I started this an hour ago. But it is still delicious. I think there's only one other thing to talk about briefly. And that is the Ashes. The Ashes, the historic sporting event that takes place every 2 years between England and Australia in the wonderful world of Test cricket. And some of you might be going, what the hell? I barely know what cricket is. What's Test cricket? Test cricket is just simply the long form of the game. And when I say long, if you're uninitiated, your head might fall off when I say each match is 5 games long. And they play 5 times across this series. And different teams have been in the ascendancy at different times in history for a long time. Australia were simply an unstoppable force in world cricket and used to pummel the English. And that pattern did get changed very memorably in 2005 when the English finally found a team with the moxie to fight back. And it was a great event. And I'm sure I've referred to this before. I know I have. And it converted a lot of neutrals to the game. So yeah. And the Ashes has been playing out this summer in England. There's been 4 out of 5 tests so far, and it's been a bit back and forth. The Australians won the first two games, the first 2 matches, the first 2 tests. Not completely dominant. England have had some moments, but maybe some bad decisions and maybe a bit of bad luck. It's a fascinating game, all the vagaries and variables. And then the English were massively galvanised towards the end of the second test when the Australians dismissed one of their batsmen by what they saw as a cheap shot, where the batsman left his safe zone by the wicket and the wicketkeeper just instinctively threw the ball to knock the stumps off to knock the bails off the stumps and get that player out. But the player thought that period of play was over and that it was unsportsmanlike. But the umpires hadn't actually indicated officially that it was over, so within the laws of the game it was okay. But the English were furious and they fought back ferociously. They didn't win that game, but they came back and did win the next test, the 3rd of 5. And the 4th test finished this weekend, and it finished as a very unsatisfactory draw, forced by heavy rain on the final day of the test. And England had been totally dominant in that test. So the English are feeling very hard done by, like they didn't get a chance to win. And because they didn't win, the only possible final overall result for the entire 5 test series is a draw between the 2 countries. And Australia are the current holders of the title. And because it's a draw, they get to retain the Ashes. And the English will not get to win. So it's been niggly. And the English were getting very excited. Very excited. They were sure they were going to be romping to a famous victory. And the momentum would carry them into the final test where they'd win again. That's what they probably thought. But now, rain has stopped play. It stopped that particular party. And there was part of me that was like, you know what? Fair enough. Because the English can get a bit carried away with themselves. Can't they, lads? Come on. If you're English and you're listening, you know it's true. Anyway, there you go. That's been enjoyable. And I'll be watching the final test, which starts this Thursday, I believe. Okay, that's it. That's all I've got. Yeah, I don't know what that I don't know how to categorize this episode. Reportage, a bit of a wrap up of recent things, recent watchings and recent doings and current beings. But that is all I've got for you this week. So I hope that was diverting, informative, stimulating on some level, maybe even amusing, and hopefully not boring. Maybe the last part about cricket was, but I stand by that mini report. Okay, you can do what? You can throw me some love on social media. All the links will be there wherever you're listening to this. If you're so inspired, so moved, so motivated, you can become a patron of this show using the Patreon link. That's patreon.com/The Clear Out. And I would welcome anything you could give, but otherwise, like, share, comment, rate, subscribe, all the normal kind of things, and I'd be delighted with any of that. It all helps. Okay, that's it. I will talk to you next week. Take it easy, mind yourselves. Bye.